Hello and welcome to the Ode to Cinema podcast. I'm joined again by Luke Crawford.
Hello.
And today we'll be discussing recreating dead actors in movies, as that's kind of a topic that's on the rise lately. So what prompted this idea is the news that James Dean will be featured in a new movie coming out soon. Do you remember the name of it?
It is called Finding Jack.
Finding Jack. Yeah, so there's been quite a bit of debate around the idea of both recreating dead actors and, I don't know, there's some ethical implications to that, as well as, should we do this? Should we let other new actors have a chance instead of trying to just recreate actors who are well known? So Luke, what are your initial thoughts on the topic?
It's very interesting because it's kind of something this has kind of been unique instance, because of course there have been instances in the past where but celebrities who have passed on have been like digitally recreated to continue a character they've previously played.
Mm-hmm.
But not really in this instance, or in this instance, it's unique because it's an entirely new story, and this company had the process of trying to find an actor and said, well, this person would best fit where we're looking, and it's interesting because that person's dead, and that person's James Dean.
Right.
And so there's this big backlash of people saying that it's disgusting or crude, even though this company has had support from the family, but it's this kind of like gray area to where you think about these people, or what's the company called? It is Worldwide XR. They have this. They go on record saying it's this good intention of honoring the legacy and kind of making this fourth James Dean film that never was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how they intend to like honor him and kind of respect the fans, yet most of the responses we've seen have been negative from people like Chris Evans or Elijah Wood or Zelda Williams. They all have this drastic response of, no, we don't want this. So it's kind of, It's really strange.
Right. I mean, you have like other instances where this has been done with like Peter Cushing in Rogue One as reprising his role posthumously as Grand Moff Tarkin, which makes quite a bit more sense because he's kind of integral to the story there. And there's some like, I don't know, there's less debate over that because they had, the estate's permission and all this. And they have the permission of James Dean's family as well for this role. But yeah, there's a quote that I found in an article that said, from the people who are making this film or were casting it, "We searched high and low for the perfect character to portray the role of Rogan, who's in this film, which has some extreme complex character arcs, and after months of research, we decided on James Dean." Just seems very odd that they couldn't find anyone else who was right for the role. It seems almost like, it's just kind of for the gimmick and like to gain more viewership by using this famous dead actor. Rather than going with any other new actor who could, I feel like, definitely play this role. I don't think he's exclusively the one to play the role. And the other thing is he's not even going to be playing the role. It's going to be his likeness, but it's not his performance. So what's the point?
And it's also interesting because I remember reading that this company, I don't have the quote in front of me, but they were kind of hoping that like showing a new generation James Dean, and kind of like they have this idea of maybe we'll be able to show this younger people who James Dean is, and it'll kind of bring this revival back of honoring his legacy. And it's an interesting way to look at it, how they're trying to think of it in a positive light, but there are a bunch of people that have been saying the opposite. I know Vice.com has had a couple they've had a couple articles explaining how they are adamantly against it,
Hmm.
explaining that like no amount of CG is gonna take away like his likeness, and how it's just this weird, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, um, they're gonna have someone else doing the voice acting for him, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna have, I think, a body double to play him, and then it's
Yeah.
gonna be digital. He's not gonna be the lead character, but he's kind of like the secondary lead character in the
Mm-hmm.
film.
And it's
Um,
it's really interesting because people have been talking about how come they couldn't find an actor to play this, and some people have been saying that like, well, they're gonna have someone there doing the mocap and voice acting, so they're gonna be credited. But then I saw this quote from Zelda Williams on Twitter where how the name on the poster is most likely going to be James Dean's name and not the actor who's portraying him and
mhm,
getting CG'd over, and how it's this kind of, or her words are saying it's belittling the acting,
mhm,
or and how it's not really like recognizing this actor who's portraying James Dean, or
yeah,
in other words, it's not choosing someone to play this character. It's just saying, well, we'll use you as a placeholder, and it's strange.
right. And James Dean has no say, obviously, in
Yeah,
whether he's portrayed in this way. So, is it right to do this?
yeah,
Yeah, and this is definitely a very recent issue as we're finally getting to a point where we can recreate people and faces digitally.
hmm,
Because it's been something that's been tried for the past, couple decades, and it hasn't been exactly. It's kind of still in the uncanny valley a little bit, but I think in these past couple years, we've definitely been seeing an increase in our capability to recreate people's faces. Because there's always things like mouth movement and just different facial features that don't line up very well, that look kind of rubbery or plastic. But I
hmm,
think recently, and I think in the next couple of years, we'll have it down so it's almost indistinguishable. So
yeah,
it's definitely a very, modern kind of issue that we're just starting to get on
yeah.
the cusp of.
Because with things like deep fakes, you realize like how real these things have become now, and it's
Mhm.
kind of getting in the area where it's hard to tell if like, is that actually a video of Will Smith saying that, or is that someone doing a deep fake?
Right,
And it's
right,
it's getting in this like gray area of like
yeah,
reality and fiction, where like it's hard to tell the difference. And with this technology, it can be, I think, really cool to see, but also it can be very bad because I don't know. I remember reading something about what is going to stop like a company from buying the rights to say like Charlie Chaplin to sell, I don't know, like antidepressant or something like
hmm
that. So it's this weird like, I don't know, area of, oh, I'm going to buy the rights to this celebrity so they
yeah,
can help sell my product.
yeah. I mean, and there have been plenty of advertisements that have used, dead actors. Like there was a Dior commercial which used Marilyn Monroe, Grace Kelly, Marlene Dietrich, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was a Dove chocolate commercial which used Audrey Hepburn, and Johnny Walker commercial which used Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm. I do
Um,
remember that.
so it's just like using the likenesses of these different people, and not just like actors, but also historical figures is kind of an interesting one, because I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot less people would have issues with recreating the likeness of a historical figure, like you have in Forrest Gump with the presidents and these famous
Mm-hmm.
historical figures, which wasn't as good digitally, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
like no one's really going to have a problem with that. Um, but then you also have actors and these cultural kind of icons that have emerged,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's like what is the difference? We kind of almost don't see them as people. I mean, they're more like idols,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting to think about for sure what that's going to look like in the future. And also, I think there is some concern of like, what about, if you can recreate the face of some famous actor and you don't have to hire them and pay like millions of dollars to have them in this role,
Mm-hmm.
and you just replace them with a double virtually, if this is a possibility, how do we both like stay authentic to the original actors? And a lot of that comes down to like likeness issues and rights,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that we'll see a lot more coming up around that, because it's kind of a wild west right now a little bit with
Mm-hmm.
not as many restrictions as there should be.
Yeah.
But I think it is also limiting to new actors who want to get in, and great talent that we haven't discovered yet. If we kind of just look to the past of the
Yeah.
greats that we have and don't allow any new talent to come in.
Yeah, because there was a quote talking about how they're using these actors' likenesses because it's something that people recognize, and it's a safe play, and it's also nostalgic, and it's kind of like weird to think about because they're using these likenesses to kind of like establish something that works instead of taking risks on new actors. So thinking about like the original trilogy of Star Wars with Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, they were all new faces, and even recently like Daisy Ridley and John Boyega. If you could use like an older actor and digitally recreating them, you're not taking those risks of finding new talent for like the upcoming generation or actors that are trying to find these roles. So it's this weird area you're in, to where you hear a company saying like, oh, we're going to use a dead actor's likeness because it's easy and it's nostalgic, and people will go, oh, I know who that is, instead of someone
and it'll
new.
get people to see it, especially if you know it's like an actor who died a long time ago and you get to see them again on the big screen. I think it's a big money move, or publicity move. But I think too why this case stands out is a lot of the times in the past when this has been done, it's because that actor either was like in the middle of working on this film and passed away, or was already in this franchise, like with Peter Cushing, or different things like that, where they've had to work in this footage. Either sometimes it's like repurposed footage, and sometimes they do like use a body and face double and recreate it.
Like with like Paul Walker and Fast and Furious, or like Oliver Reed and Gladiator.
Right, and there's a lot of great uses of that too. I think of like Logan, they used it a lot with like stunt doubles and putting Hugh Jackman's face over the top. And there's a lot of really impressive effects that can be done and can create a whole lot of different possibilities that we didn't really have before. And it's interesting with like the instance of Rogue One, because like you have Tarkin, who's traditionally in the universe, and then there's a quote from the head of development for Lucas Story Group, and how they talk about how if this character is not in the movie, they're going to have to find a way to explain why. And it kind of raises difficulties with the story, and I don't know if that kind of trivializes the subject, but it's a valid point in terms of this story of like, this character was previously in these stories and in this world, and so it makes sense to digitally recreate, because he had in the past given consent to being this character. But it's still also gray, because what would he say now? Would he not want to be in the movie? Right.
And it's also huge because James Dean is never been this character before, so it's this whole new issue.
And he never agreed to playing this character or anything like that.
And it's also this issue of like a family of agreeing to put this person in a movie, and it's kind of like, what can your family decide for you in the future? And it's, I don't know, it's so strange.
Another thing I was going to say is like when Carrie Fisher passed away, there was a lot of debate over, she was supposed to have a very substantial role. Well, people were worried about episode 8 too, but I think they had already finished filming everything they needed for episode 8.
Yeah.
But people were really worried about episode 9 because you have them bringing back Peter Cushing, and there's a lot of backlash about them bringing back Carrie Fisher digitally. And I believe they're just using repurposed footage from episode 7. But there definitely is quite a bit of backlash towards recreating these, these beloved actors. That it's kind of not true to them. And but I mean, it does definitely affect the story as well. And there's also a lot of backlash to them being recast by different actors, which is what had to happen a lot in the past. But now we don't have to do that, really.
Yeah.
So.
And there's also like the idea that if you recreate these actors or actresses in movies or VR, you can have them do or say or
Mm-hmm.
act in ways that they wouldn't normally. So it's this like,
Mm-hmm.
you might be rewriting how people remember them.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that you have James Dean. This is just a random example. In Finding Jack, James Dean could act a certain way, and now people think of him as the way he acted in Finding
Mm-hmm.
Jack, and not really
Right.
remembering how he actually did when he was alive.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
this strange thing that you could kind of rewrite how a person acts or
Mm-hmm.
feels. But that, I guess, that also comes into play with the family. I guess they also have a say of saying this isn't how this person is, and then it's more gray area of having to deal with people that knew them when they were alive.
Right, and I've heard of quite a bit of fear around like in actors around like the way they're presented posthumously, and
Oh yeah.
there's been some that say like in their will or in their contract or whatever. This is all kind of happening recently as we start to see this on the
Mm-hmm.
rise, but they're like, I don't want to be associated with anything with like alcoholism or
Yeah.
like marijuana or anything like this. So yeah, there is a fear of representation because of course these actors become kind of cultural icons and they know
Yeah.
that they will live on for years to come regardless, and that's becoming more and more of a reality as we can actually make them
Mm-hmm.
live
And
on. Yeah.
yeah, and then like I heard about how Tom Cruise kind of owns his likeness. That's why
Right.
you never see his face on like action figures or in video
Mm-hmm.
games and stuff, because he kind of owns himself. And so
Mm-hmm.
now, and I always thought that was kind of weird, but like in this age of
Yeah.
digitally recreating people, he was kind of ahead of the game of like
Mm-hmm.
securing his likeness and not letting it be used for something he might not want.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think of like the Jordan Peele deepfake that came out of Obama a few years ago, I think. But that had a lot of people really scared because it looks and sounds just like Obama is saying these things, but it's not actually.
Huh.
And then what potential does that leave to not just for actors who have passed away, but for like living people who
Mm-hmm.
can be shown saying or doing any number of things,
Yeah.
because people want to implicate them or, make people believe that they're this way.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary. We live in an age of like misinformation now,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't really distinguish as much what is truth and what is false.
Yeah.
And this only adds to that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm excited to see like what unfolds from this. And as of now, I think they're still moving forward with production with Finding Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an article from, I believe it was from Vice, where the director who announced that they were going to use James Dean was honestly surprised by the negative feedback, because it says he was saddened and confused over the overwhelmingly negative comments, saying that we don't really understand it. We never intended this to be a marketing gimmick. And it's kind of like, it's strange to see how someone doesn't see the downside of this and sees how positive this can be, or seeing that the affirmation from the family is a green light. And it's strange how someone can be so blindsided by it.
It's surprising to me that he doesn't that he can't see it as a marketing gimmick. I mean, that's what I would see it as. I mean, I understand that there can be like just some love for James Dean and the desire to see him in another role, but to me it absolutely seems like a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, if you think about it, it's like this Vietnam era drama coming out with maybe people that you haven't heard of. A studio might not pick it up, or it might be shown in a couple theaters, or it might be just thrown on VOD. And now that it has James Dean's name and it has this whole like what's the word I'm looking for? It has this spotlight shown on it now, and it's in the news, and it's being reported about. It's definitely come to the surface, and now people will probably go see it, or maybe people might not see it at all because of this negative publicity.
Could be another boycott kind of
Yeah.
film where people are outraged by it. Yeah, to me it just seems kind of weird that they think he's the only one who can portray the role when he
Yeah,
can't actually portray the role. That's
it
kind of
kind of
just my
sounds like they didn't
opinion
try
on it.
hard enough.
Yeah, I don't know what the case was for
Of
deciding,
course.
and I don't
Hmm.
know if like the director had as much say in what happened with it, but
Hmm.
it's like you can't replicate his performance because he can't perform.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have the performance of this voice actor and this body double, and you're gonna throw James Dean's face on it, but it's not really gonna be his performance. So
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like they're just using his face as a way to sell it to me.
Hmm.
But
And going on that, do you have like the same thought towards Rogue One, or is it kind of the thought process of that person had played that character before, so you kind of know how they're supposed to act?
yeah, I feel less like
Got
worried
it.
about instances like that with Rogue One. Like it is a little weird, but he's
Hmm.
already been established as this character in this franchise, and they're not doing anything like different from his character in those
Hmm.
movies. But with this, a totally like original film. I mean, not it's taken from a book, a written material already, but this actor was never a part of this role or this character or had any say in this. So that's why this seems really weird to me. Um, Whereas, like, I don't know, with Peter Cushing, it seemed kind of like paying homage to his role and his character, and this just seems kind of like taking advantage of his likeness.
Yeah,
So,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hot. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, but I'm also trying to have like a hard time being so against it because I see the director and how he has
Mm-hmm.
nothing but good intentions, or at least he says so. So I don't know. It's just this really strange thing that's fun to discuss and
Mm-hmm.
talk about. And
Yeah.
frankly, I'm super excited and also terrified for
Yeah,
what's to come from it.
for sure. Yeah, we'll have to see where this goes in the future.
Hmm.
So yeah, let us know what your guys' thoughts are down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on what you think the future of this might look like, what the ethical implications are, and things like that. Because it's definitely something that hasn't been explored yet, and there's a lot of room for debate on it. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think we'll end off our discussion there. But we I think have some movie recommendations this week. Luke, do you have a movie to recommend?
You mentioned Logan earlier, and
Hmm.
I don't know if anyone's not seen it, but I do highly recommend it because it may seem like a just a superhero movie on the surface, but it's a lot more than that, and it's really cool to see the use of visual effects in Logan and how it's used to further the story but and make it more impactful.
Yeah. Well, one movie I saw recently was Being There, which came out in 1979 as a Hal Ashby film starring Peter Sellers. But I found it quite interesting. It's kind of about this guy who's lived in this one house all his life as a gardener, and then he one day is forced to leave, and he's never been in the outside world before. And
Hmm.
everyone kind of takes the things he says as really deep and meaningful, even though really all he's seen of the world is on TV and in gardening. Um, and people kind of see him as they want to see him. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite interesting. I recommend it. It's
Hmm.
pretty. It's quite slow and like reflective and more philosophical. I guess it's fairly comedic as well, but
Hmm.
it might not be for everyone.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but I will check it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's where we'll end it off for today. So thanks for tuning in. And again, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.